not sure if it connected to this particular one. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. 1201, I'm going to get started. Hey, everybody, this is Chuck Marone. For the people who don't know, which is fine if you don't know, we're good with that. I'm the founder and president of this organization called Strong Towns. I am going to go through a little bit of the history and our strategic vision and what we're doing there. But before we do that, I would like to introduce the two people who are with me. The other one on your screen that says Strong Towns is Kia Wilson. Kia, why don't you just tell everybody what you do here?
Sure. I do a lot of things. So my name's Kia. I am the communications manager for Strong Towns. I think it's technically my title, but like a lot of folks at Strong Towns, I wear a lot of hats. Mostly what I do is I handle the sort of big funnel communications that are not content to our audience. So every single email comes from me pretty much. All of our social media postings pass through me. I am also doing a lot of our like messaging and branding on the site when it comes to language, at least. And I have the added responsibility right now, which is really fun, of planning the Strong America Tour. So I consider that another sort of form of big funnel communications because it is taking our event game to a whole new level. So those are the three big things on my plate most of the time. I've been with Strong Towns for 2.5 years, and I live in St. Louis, Missouri.
Awesome. The third person with us today is Daniel Harrigus. Daniel, why don't you go ahead and do likewise?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Daniel Harrigus. I am the content manager for Strong Towns. I've been with the organization 1 year as of yesterday.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun. And I am soon no longer going to be the content manager because we are going to be hiring a content manager, and my title is going to shift to senior editor. So right now what I do is oversee all of the content that we're publishing on the site. My job is to coordinate that content stream, work with guest writers, sort of solicit post ideas, figure out what we're going to be publishing 2 or 3 posts a day, 5 days a week, write a good deal of it myself. And then I've been doing all the layout, sort of putting the whole package together with the title, a cover photo, everything. The way we are breaking things up, once we have one of you on board, is that we'll have a content manager taking over some of the day-to-day management of the content stream, coordinating with our writers, making sure that they're going to meet their deadlines, making sure that that calendar is full, doing some of the copy editing, doing the layout. And I will be focused a little bit more on the big picture, longer term planning. What are our priorities with our content stream? What are the messages? What are the stories we really want to tell? What do we want to go in depth on 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out, 8 weeks out, and then let's work together to make that happen. So that's the way we're kind of shifting this role. And I may have gotten ahead of myself. And
yeah, a little bit. It's okay.
A little bit.
Where are you?
I am in Sarasota, Florida.
But you're a what? You're a Minnesotan, right?
I am a Minnesotan. Once a Minnesotan, always a Minnesotan.
That's right. I didn't mention that I'm in Brainerd, Minnesota, a couple hours north of Minneapolis, St. Paul. We're up to 104 attendees, so I'm going to assume that my paid upgrade actually worked. So we'll let this number keep rising. We split this up into kind of 4 different parts. The first part is I'm going to give you a little bit of background and history on Strong Towns and our strategic vision. The second part is Daniel's going to talk a little bit about the role itself. And then Kia is going to talk about what it's like to work here at Strong Towns. And then we're going to open it up for questions. I do have some questions that were submitted that I didn't answer as part of the Q&A thing we posted. If you haven't seen that, we'll send you a link to this video and also a link to those Q&A, that post we did earlier this week where we took a lot of the questions that people had. There were 3 or 4 left over from that I wanted to answer. And then I want to let everybody know there's a Q&A button. For me, it's on the bottom. I think it's on the left or right for other people. I don't know. But if you click that Q&A button, you'll be able to ask a question. And in the time we've got, we'll do our best to get to as many as we can, focusing on the ones that we haven't already answered in the online post we did earlier this week. So I am going to switch to my screen. I was actually put together a presentation for some people a year ago. So this says 2018 implementation strategy. It's a little like dated, but the core stuff I want to talk about, 1, 2, 3 here, is exactly the same. So I'm just going to reuse in a very efficient way. Very briefly, I'm an engineer and a planner, did engineering work for cities all over Minnesota for many years. I went back to grad school, got a planning degree, started doing planning work with my own firm. By the time we got to the housing crisis, we had 5 offices and 13 staff, and we're working all over the place here in Minnesota doing planning work. In 2008, for a variety of reasons, and there's a good post on this that you can read called The History of, or 10 Years of Strong Towns, Year 1, kind of goes through everything that prompted me to sit down and write. But in November of 2018, I started a blog. I was exploring some ideas about why cities were struggling financially, some of the projects that I had worked on, their implications financially for how cities would function and struggle. And to make a kind of long drawn out story short, that took off. I was sharing it with some professional friends and colleagues, and just more and more people started to read it. And it grew and grew and grew. Eventually, I was encouraged by some friends to start a nonprofit. They actually helped me do that and were the first board we had. Things have evolved over time until we got to 2015. And 2015 is where our board of directors and I had a retreat here in the Brainerd Lakes area in central Minnesota, and wrote out our first strategic plan. Our strategic plan is a very simple document. It's like 4 pages or 5 pages. It lays out the 3 things that we do that we focus on in terms of fulfilling our mission, which is to support a model of development that allows our cities to become financially strong and resilient. Those 3 things are to create powerful content, to share a message widely, and then to nudge people to take action as part of those first 2 steps. So I'm going to go through those like really, really quickly here. If you go on the About page of our website, you're going to see a lot of stuff that talks about what our values are and what our approach is. I'm not going to go through those here, but I'd strongly recommend that you do that. Our content revolves around contributors. Most of our contributors are not paid. They're volunteers. Some of them are on staff. We're paid, obviously, but the people who write for us in other parts are not necessarily. We do have some freelance writers that we use now and then. And we are looking to perhaps, if we get the right person in place here for this job, increase that budget a little bit. But we've got a kind of a broad group of contributors that has been growing pretty steadily. In that frame, we publish content, a lot of written content. Like Daniel said, we'll do 2-3 articles a day. We have 3 different podcasts that we do. I think I'm going to get to that in a sec. But the idea is to communicate our message through our content stream. We want to reach as many people as we can with our ideas and our thoughts, and get those out there in ways that they can mentally digest and have it affect the way they look at their cities and the way they think about their cities. We use advanced analytics. We're pretty data focused. So we track our audience on a kind of moment-to-moment basis. We use different tools to analyze scroll rates and click-through rates and where people are looking at our content and where they're getting stuck. We do user testing and other things to get feedback from people. We're very data-focused and very kind of obsessed about how people use and interact with our content. As I said, we've got 3 different podcasts. We do a podcast on Monday, another one on Wednesday, another one on Friday on 3 different streams. They got 3 different focus. One is more of a Q&A kind of thing. We're looking at some type of interesting person or deep issue. Sometimes it becomes a monologue. Our second one is focuses on people who are doing things, people who are doing successful things that we want to highlight and let people know about. And then the third one is more of a current events kind of discussion podcast. You can get our podcasts anywhere you get your podcasts. We also routinely do these web broadcasts. Every other month we do a Q&A, like an Ask Strong Towns kind of thing. We also have experts that we bring in that we will question and then let our audience, ping as well as a way to kind of broaden our conversation and reach people on a different platform. So we're doing that routinely. And then we share through our different feeds non-native content. So things that are going on that are related, we will put our spin on them. We'll give them like the Strong Towns context and kind of start conversations that way as a way to help people understand the Strong Towns kind of focus and philosophy while looking at other news sources. Then the last thing here in the producing content is our events. Kia mentioned the Strong America Tour. That is a big national tour we're putting together in concert with a book release that we have coming out in October. We do events all over the country all year long. I think I spent almost 60 nights on the road last year. Daniel will do some of these. One of our board members, John, does some of these. We're trying to get Kia out on the road a little bit because she's fantastic at this. But basically, we go out and we share our message with people in small groups and large groups all across the country on a regular basis. This is our audience growth. We, like I said, are very focused on metrics. We track our audience growth as a way to measure our success. This is from last year. We're quite a bit above this now. We see robust growth month over month in our audience stream and year over year. That's been kind of consistent. And obviously, the more people we can reach, the better off we're doing. So create powerful content. That's the first part of what we do. The second is we share that message widely. We have an entire kind of distribution strategy that we use to get our message in front of people. We have created what we call internally a pipeline, where we start with an audience. We nudge them into becoming a weak connection. So someone that would follow us on Facebook or Twitter, someone who would follow us in one of the places where we're distributing things and become interested in our message. We then nudge them along a path to become a strong connection where they become part of our Slack conversation or give us their email address so we can communicate with them that way. We then look at it as the next step, becoming an advocate, someone who's out there talking to people about Strong Towns and doing Strong Towns types of things in their communities, communicating our message in their way, and then ultimately becoming a member. Members are how we support our organization. It's how we fund a big part of what we do. I want to say we're about 40% of our revenue comes from people giving us $5, $10 a month, or $25 or $50 a year. It's a big deal for us. We do spend money on advertising. Advertising for us is a way to get our message in front of people. We run ads on Facebook. We've got a whole Google AdWords campaign that we run. The idea is when people are looking for our message or are interested in our conversation, we want our stuff to be in front of them so that they can find it, they can fall in love with it, they can get, have it be sticky to them and find the information that they're after. We also do a lot of email marketing. We've got a pretty intricate onboarding process for people. We're always kind of refining those in different ways. We send regular email communications out to people. If you are getting stuff from Kia at Strong Towns, that's our Kia right there. She actually sits down and writes those 2 or 3 days a week and ships those out to people based on their level of engagement. So we're pretty serious about doing email well. We have really high engagement rates. This again is from a year ago. This will be much higher now. We're reaching a lot of people, and that accelerates, over time. But I think the thing that is most astounding for us about our message is the stickiness and the engagement of it. We focus on this a lot. We do a lot with metrics. We're trying to get the right message in front of the right people. But what we see is that when we do that, people respond to it. People respond to our message. They're very motivated by it. And our message is really, really sticky. We have one ad we run that has a 34% click-through rate. And anybody who knows ads, if you can get an online ad to have a 1.5% click-through rate, you're doing pretty well. 34% is like the unicorn of all unicorns. It's insane. But that's kind of, the way our message resonates with people. Create powerful content, share a message, and then nudge people to take action is the third part. We want to get people doing things. Our whole movement is designed to change the way we build our cities and build our places. And the mechanism we've chosen is media to make that happen. But ultimately, we don't just want clicks. We don't just want people reading our stuff. We want people doing things on the ground. So we want to nudge people to do something in their place. And we kind of lay out 3 steps for this. If we can get people sharing our message, that's kind of the first step. Taking our stuff, our content, the memes we put together, the videos we put together, the podcast, and sharing them with someone else. That's a huge, powerful thing for us. When you can take our message and put it in your words and communicate it to someone, you're validating that this is important. This is important to our place. This is important to me. This should be important to you. And that's a huge step. We talk then about becoming a member, joining our conversation, being part of our online discussions, being part of our community, being a contributing member so we can help grow this movement and reach more people. And then the third part of nudging people to action is to actually work with people to take action in their place. How do we get people out volunteering, working to make their block better, their neighborhood better? Sometimes people are motivated to run for office or volunteer for a committee. Sometimes they're motivated to fix up a house or start a business. There's all kinds of different ways that you can act to build a strong town and to make your community stronger. And we just want to make those known to people and then also kind of nudge them along that path and celebrate them when they take those actions. With that, I am going to turn it over to Daniel to chat about this content manager position and how that fits in with our overall strategic vision.
All right, sure. So, and I may have inadvertently kind of previewed this before I just started going and describing what I do now. But yeah, we've chosen to be a media organization. That is our mechanism for bringing about the change we want to see on the ground in how we build our cities, how we approach growth and development and long-term resilience in our places, which means we want to be not just a compelling voice. We just don't want to be a blog that you want to read about planning and growth and development and that people find interesting, but the purpose of our content is to nudge people to greater engagement, to take action in their places, to share the message with others who will, to grow a mass movement. Content is, I think our content capacity is somewhat of a bottleneck on our ability to reach more and more people with this really compelling message that we do have. And so bringing on a second person to help manage the content stream is a way of being able to do some of the things that have been sitting on the back burner for us that we would like to do, ultimately really amplify the message. I can talk a bit about what we try to do with content, what your job will be as content manager. We want to make sure that we are putting out really high quality stuff that gets people to think about the place that they live in a strong towns way through the lens of our vision and our principles, which means we are commenting on any number of ranges, on a wide range of topics, any number of topics. We feature guest contributors with very different voices, from a little more informal to a little more kind of policy wonk. But the unifying theme is we want to get you to see yourself as a strong towns advocate, to ask questions through a strong towns lens. We we incorporate a lot of movement building language into our content stream for that reason. We talk about ourselves as a movement. Something you're not going to see on more of like an urban focused news site like a City Lab is a lot of references to us as an organization, like in the content stream. Strong Towns advocates this. Strong Towns talks about this in this. We publish success stories from our members, people who identify with our movement, who are on the ground doing really cool things. We want to find those stories. We want to root them out. We want to give them a platform. We want to amplify that. And so there's a lot of day-to-day work in terms of finding the stories that we can tell, coordinating with the people who have those stories, you know, being in touch with people in our movement who are doing the on-the-ground work to make their place a little bit stronger, saying, hey, do you want to write a guest post? When can you get it to me? Do you need some guidance developing it? Finding the stories that we could tell that would be really compelling, putting it all together, doing the day-to-day, the copy editing, the layout, making sure the package is professional and compelling.
I want to ask you a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I can. You know, one of the things that I know we've kind of we've kind of been overwhelmed with is that we have a lot of great story ideas that are bigger than just like a one-off piece. I'm in like part 5 or 6 of a who knows how many part series this will be writing, but we have other things, other campaigns we'd like to run around issues. How do you see this position working in terms of that?
I think that the person hired for this position would work closely with me to discuss those opportunities, identify them, and then ultimately the content manager would be in charge of developing and implementing a plan for doing those more in-depth explorations of a topic, or I think you know, it could be a more elaborate series, something that we've been wanting to cover. We just don't have the in-house capacity to line that up. It would be finding people who are doing the work, getting them for interviews, getting them for a guest post. I think there's also, we have a wish list of things that aren't just topic ideas we haven't covered, but we have a wealth of material from the last few years that we know is compelling. We know the ideas resonate with people. Some of it could use a little bit of repackaging. Like, let's find these insights that have come out of people in the Strong Towns movement or people who've written for Strong Towns, and let's create a really compelling, sticky, memorable package that captures the insight just right, that people are going to want to share widely. And I think there's a huge internal wish list that we have of, you know, I keep making reference to this idea or to this post or to this analogy that someone used that we've published before. We don't have the perfect package. We don't have the perfect kind of shareable piece. And like, I would hope that someone in this position, you know, it's not just having the staff power and the hours to put some of that together, but I would hope that the person we get in this position would have a lot of initiative and a lot of creativity in terms of looking at our content stream holistically with me and with the rest of the team, and looking for how can we package it for maximum impact? How can we package it to get people to want to share it, to inspire people to be advocates?
Kia, I want to switch to you. And I asked you to chat about what it's like to work here. But you and I have talked about this a long time, this kind of position too. And I want to give you a chance to kind of add on to anything if you thought there was something that would be good to communicate from what Daniel said, and then talk a little bit about what it's like to work here.
Oh gosh. Well, to pick up on what Daniel was saying, I would say, you know, and also to pick up on some of the questions in the Q&A, I'm starting to see filter in that I know are hot on people's minds. I think that this is a position, at least to me, that seems like what's really crucial about it is that it's someone who's nimble, someone who, if somebody drops a deadline, a freelancer or a volunteer writer just can't get it together, they can make sure that we're still meeting our content objectives, producing things that are going to keep people engaged, and are always keeping an eye on like Daniel is doing so beautifully right now, what is the Strong Towns mission about? How are we using content? How are we going to change the world with articles in a large sense, which I know can sound a little bit anemic to some folks, but I think it would be amazing if we had someone in this position who believes every bit as strongly as we do that we need to change culture in order to change the way our world is built. Daniel had a great predecessor. Daniel's awesome too, and our colleague Rachel Quednaw. And I think what always amazed me about Rachel and that I would love to see in this new position is someone who can keep a heck of a lot of plates spinning, who sees like, oh gosh, this is about to drop. I'm just going to scoop up and do it. And that's the only thing I would add, because I think Daniel did a good job of describing what it's for.
Great. I know you really struggle with the oppressive culture of working at small towns.
Yeah, I'm suffering right now.
I can see. I got in here today and I realized, like, A, I didn't shave. B, I'm like wearing like a summer t-shirt. And I'm like, oh, we're doing this webinar today
Right.
for like potential new hires. This is like formal wear for the office for me. So Kia, go ahead and talk a little bit about what it's like to work here.
Totally. I think when I describe what it's like to work at Strong Towns, the most frequent response I get is like, no way. Like, people are very jealous of my job because I have a unicorn job, and we all do. It's a flexible remote job where you can manage your own time. You can set your own schedule. When you are collaborating with people, it's with people who are very kind and really great and really fun to work with. And you have to travel a little bit, but one of those trips every year is to one of the Disney theme parks. So it doesn't hurt too bad, I will say. And the other trip is to another staff retreat. Disney is where we do our staff retreats. We alternate between Anaheim and Orlando to keep things democratic. The other one is to a place usually where we have Strong Towns collaborators who we love very much and want to get to know better. And we all stay in an Airbnb and eat a lot of really good snacks. And we have a really, really productive time. I think Strong Towns for me has been an ideal fit in a lot of ways. I don't think that every single person who thinks that they should be jealous of me would actually love my job, because it takes a special person to be able to do the amount of work that we are doing as well as we do it in this environment. So, like, I will say I am someone who I thrive on being able to, like, I was always that person in an office who would like look around and say, like, I could get 6 times as much done if I could just be at home, if I could structure my day, if I didn't have to do all of this water cooler talk, and if I could just get into a flow state for a little while, I could be way more effective, and I want to be that effective. By the same token, like, it's not a pure introvert, monkish, hole up in a cave and never talk to anyone kind of a job, though it has that side. You are talking to people all the time. It's a really dynamic day. So if, like, I'm describing a typical day in my workday, yeah, I'm doing a lot of self-organizing. I'm sorting hundreds of emails into order of priority. I am updating my, we use a time management software called Asana. Everyone else on the team pronounce it Asana because they don't do yoga like me. So I'm right, they're wrong. But in any case, getting my Asana tasks sort of queued up and making sure I'm meeting all my objectives, getting my Scrum tasks, which is what we use for like medium-term priorities, making sure I'm getting them done. But then also something will pop up, I'll get a call from my colleague Bo and say, hey, Kia, I really am having a hard time with this grant proposal. Could you take a look at it? And like, you drop everything and you help out your friends. So it's an unusual job in that, like, you have to have the ability to both really manage your own time and set your own goals and thrive in that sort of environment, but you also have to be really open and skilled at collaborating and communicating across digital space, which for us means a lot of meetings. I'm on the phone or on a video call 2 or 3 times a day usually. So it's flexible, but you do still have to maintain some hours where you can connect with people. That said, you can work from anywhere. I have worked from poolside in Key West. I have done some really fantastic passion projects that would have been just impossible in a standard job because I can take 20 minutes off to go meet a contractor at the rental property I'm developing as affordable housing. And that's something that brings so much value and joy to my life. I can walk my very athletic, huge dog multiple times a day, which is my way of saying this. Strong Towns is very family friendly. Whatever family means to you, for me, family is mostly like my partner and my pets. So, and they have a lot of needs. So yeah, it's a great workplace. To speak to like the broader culture, I think that Chuck, I'll say, is a fantastic manager who's really good at looking at each individual person and saying like, not why aren't you getting this done, but like, why are you struggling and how can we clear a path to helping you succeed? Which I didn't always trust when I started, because I think very few bosses authentically are like that, and he's authentically like that.
I'm trying to become meaner.
Okay, well, good luck with that, because you're from Minnesota. I would also say that we had a meeting recently with our new friend Dottie, who's doing some publicity work for us under contract, and she commented to all of us, like, we have one of the least territorial workplaces in the world. Like, there's slippage between what all of us do, you know, like, yes, I manage communications, but I do a lot with content. I write for the site a lot. I co-host a podcast. Like, Daniel and I are constantly talking, like all day. Daniel and I talk. Jacob, who does our member or our communication one-to-one with people who are interested in joining the Strong Towns community kind of in any capacity, we're constantly chatting as well. So I think the perfect candidate and the person who would be happiest here is someone who is an introvert who is able to put on an extrovert coat for a little while and it won't make them suffer. So yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Can I, as you were talking, it occurred to me, you and I are probably in the same room together twice a year, 3 times a year.
Yeah, something like that.
And I mean, when I see you, like, I'll give you a hug and I'm like, hey, it's nice to see you. But I don't feel like, oh, it's been so long, I haven't. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like,
I know, like when your kids are at dance competition.
Yeah, exactly.
Like how much, like, you know, how much my dog grew this week, generally speaking. Yeah, it's a really friendly workplace for having no literal water cooler and not having a lot of like lean over the cubicle small talk. It feels really personable and friendly.
It does. I want to ask, before we switch to questions, I want to ask each of you along the lines of what Kia said. What is the weirdest place you've worked? Like been present working in a day for Strong Towns? Kia, you said Key West. Is there?
Yeah.
Is that it?
For sure. Yeah. I got a surprise vacation for Christmas and I did not have enough vacation days because I just started working. And then I was like, but wait, I can just take the non-sunny hours of the day and work from wherever I am. And it works out really great. Yeah.
Daniel, what's the weirdest place in the last year you've worked from?
So I've unmuted my audio, but my dog is currently growling at a UPS truck, so I'm just going to apologize for that.
It's all good.
Be sure that they're here to kill us all. I have worked from a picnic table at the beach, which was pretty great. I tend to have my periods of the day that are kind of rapid fire, responding to emails, dealing with little tasks, and then my periods when, okay, I got to write an article. I'm going to take 3 hours and I'm going to unplug and do it. And I make a point of just taking that to, yep, sorry about the dog. We're all going to die. Being able to sit at home and hang out with my dog and still get work done is also a nice perk.
I've done, I mean, obviously I do a lot on the plane, and I think that's the weirdest one from like being online. But the strangest one, the one where I felt the oddest, was these dance competitions that my girls have. Because when you're in dance, you'll dance like 3 minutes and then it will be like 4 hours until your next dance. And I just sat up in like the bleachers and worked, and nobody cared because mom, as the dad, I'm not allowed back in the dance area because it's girls changing and all this stuff, which I'm fine with that. But that means my wife does a lot of hair and makeup things and all that. And dad just kind of in the way. So for me to take like 2 hours or 3 hours and just sit up in the bleachers, they're like, oh, okay, dad's off on his own. That was the weirdest one because you're sitting there in this pounding loud music with girls screaming and running all over. And yeah, and I'm typing away.
And there's junior tap dancing happening. Like
exactly. There's like 9-year-old hip hop down there.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'm doing this. Okay. The 3 questions I left off that I wanted us to answer as a group here. What are the core values of the company and for employees at Strong Towns? I feel like I kind of answered that with my part. I would really recommend going to that about page on the website and going through, here's the things we're trying to accomplish. And that used to be written like an engineer wrote it and then Kia rewrote it, and now it's way better. That's what I would do, is go there and do that. Okay. As a team, how does working remotely compare to working in an office? You feel like you covered that, Kia? I kind of do, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, might add just like a little bit of the non-introvert experience, because I do think that there have been people who work for Strong Towns who like it just didn't work for them, and that's okay,
Yeah.
It's just you got to know that about yourself, and sometimes you learn that about yourself when you have a remote job for the first time. I think the folks that I know who don't like working in a remote office, they really miss the water cooler talk. They miss like take a break at like once an hour and just like socialize a little bit. Like I don't miss that. Like I know I feel really freakish and weird saying that, but I have a very active social life after 5 o'clock. I'm one of those weirdos who I start my day like around 9 and I end it around 5, and I'm in like a flow state most of the day. And that's just how my brain has always worked. And like I never really did great working, retail things like that, where I was constantly getting interrupted by things that weren't in the stream. So yeah, I think the challenging part is people who, if you have a trouble like socializing and getting to know people in a digital space, or if you need like constant chatter around you and like putting on a podcast in the background like I do all the time, like won't do it for you, then this probably isn't the job for you, and that's all right. It's just different propensities.
I feel like there's a couple things. And Daniel, go ahead, Daniel. I'll let you please take it first.
We jumped in at the same time. I would add, I'm speaking as someone who has held 2 remote jobs and hated one of them and loved one of them, and I love this one. I do feel like it's a social work environment in a different way. We're on Slack with each other all the time. We have some of the equivalent of water cooler talk. I think the thing about any remote job is, for your own sanity and productivity, you need to figure out how you're going to structure your work environment and your day, and I think that can be a challenge. Kia talked about clocking in at 9 and being in a flow state all day, and clocking out and having a really active non-work life after work. And she does that, and I find it admirable. I don't do that. I kind of, get a burst of ideas for something I'm writing at 9 p.m. and I'll sit down and work for an hour. And I've found different ways to compartmentalize my time where it's not one big block, but there is the need to kind of figure that out on your own, I think. But as a team, we're in communication. We're there for you. I find that there's a lot of pressure from my colleagues, not in a bad way, but in a very encouraging way to excel and to push myself to be better at what I do. And I love that.
I find myself starting and stopping a lot, and taking I have 2 daughters, and like in the summer I'm home with them. So it's driving them to this and driving them to that. And I volunteer for softball coach. So I've got, that stuff. But I will be working on something and it's just not going well. And I will just take the dog for a walk as a way to kind of clear my brain and think about it again. And I guess I hated the arbitrariness of the office, and how when you were there, like they owned you, and when you were gone, you were free. And I like the fact that I can kind of decide when my brain is ready to like engage with this stuff. On the other hand, and I will say this as a downside of doing what we do, the way we do it, you have to be, and I'll hold Kia up as like the model, you have to be good at shutting off. You have to be good at saying like, now is when I'm working and now is when I'm not working. And if you don't have that discipline, your life will be miserable because you'll just always work. I mean, there's no, the place you work and the place you don't work is the same. So if you're not good at like mentally shutting it off and moving on, I do a social media Sabbath, I call it. Like I've got 1 day a week I don't do social media. I shut things off. I very intentionally like step away, and I have that separation. I think you've got to be able to do that. let's hit to the Q&A. We're now up to 22 questions. I'm going to try to pick one from each here because somebody have multiple questions.
We do have some questions in the chat as well. So
Oh, you
just
do?
so you know.
Oh.
And folks, it would really help us out if you could just move those questions from the chat to the Q&A so they're all in one place for us. They're a little harder to moderate. So thank you so much. I know we didn't go over that at the top. And
sorry.
No, it's no big deal.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take the top two questions from Drew here. What separates someone who is adequate from someone who's exceptional at this position? And then what do you think are the most important qualities for someone to excel in this position? I'm going to kind of lump those together into one question. Kia, you want to start with that?
Ooh, yeah.
Just give it like a 30-second gut reaction.
Yeah, my gut check is someone who is adequate at this position will meet all their deadlines, will, be accountable to the general vision and project of, creating a content stream that's designed to change the world. Someone who's exceptional is someone who will bring some personality and vision to it and will have a sense that of along with Daniel, of what the rest of the team wants to accomplish, and is always sort of like magicking their way to something a little bit better. That's a little vague, but I'll think about that more.
I think it's great. Okay. Daniel, do you got a sense on this one?
Yeah, for me, I think what I would look for in someone who's exceptional at this position is someone who really deeply understands the Strong Towns mission and what we're trying to do, and is intellectually curious about that, and then can translate that into communicating it really effectively to the world, and add to our ability to think about what's the story we're telling and how best we tell it.
Yeah, I think I would build on that and say, I feel like what Kia said is like getting stuff done is like the adequate. The Spidey skill, like the thing that separates you, to me would be the ability to anticipate and think ahead. Like good. I'm look, 6 weeks from now, we've got to do this. And so I've got to talk to this person and get this lined up. It's that ability to anticipate. Will the new content manager also be responsible for writing articles? What are the content creation expectations? If you don't mind, I'll just take this one really quick. I think the short answer to that is yes. I think that what we've always done is if someone has the capacity to write and likes it, we've always found a way for them to do that. Like if that's an expressive thing for you, we'll figure it out. But I know there are a lot of things that I think you just call a brief, something that would be 400 to 600 words, something that would be really quick, that they sit on the table and they don't get done because we don't have the capacity to do it. When I'm thinking of running a content calendar with 15 slots to fill a week, there's a number of those that come up that I think a content manager could easily do and easily fill, that would meet the need for the slot and also be really important stuff that we need to get published. Is that fair, you two?
Totally, yeah. I think there's a whole bunch of like, Chuck was on this podcast, or Strong Towns was mentioned by X, that is very simple, just like getting the word out there, that like I think it wouldn't be a stretch for this person to also take on.
Totally. Does Strong Towns connect with community organizing efforts? They list a bunch of different things. I think like yes, in the sense that we hope they read our stuff, and yes, in the sense that if they're doing great things, we like to highlight those, when they're kind of in our vein. Do we have like an active component of what we do doing that? Not really. Is that fair?
It's kind of a challenging line to walk, we're very deliberate about, as people who decided we wanted to change the world through as a media organization, we're very deliberately not organizers. We do want to give people the tools for organizing to some extent, but we recognize that organizations like, I'll pick up on Gamaliel because I've taken some of their organizer trainings. What they're doing is so intensive and valuable and amazing, and is not replicable in a mass media format. So are we in touch with them? Yes. Are they a very natural and neat fit for what we're doing? No. But you might look at, I did an article called like So you want to build a strong town, which was sort of like distilling down some of the general like concepts of like Gamaliel training for a strong towns audience. And I think that those sort of collaborations would be a great content idea. I don't think that they were going to ever grow our organization to like also be community organizers, because that's just a different field.
I'll say before the 2015 strategic plan, we dabbled in this a little bit. We tried different things. And what we found is that every time we did something that was not in the wheelhouse of create content, distribute that content, nudge people to take action, our movement lost momentum. We are not, we're not good. The next question is about local chapters and meetup groups. We're not community organizers. It's not our like special skill. Our special skill is creating this great content and getting it out in front of people and having that be a way that we change things. When we start to stray from that, we spend a lot of money and a lot of effort and don't see a lot of return from it. And when we stick to what we do, it works out really well. So I think I feel like all these things are like friends of ours, you know, like we like allies, but it's not like we want them to be really good at what they do. And hopefully they find our stuff helpful to what they do, right?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that we have this sort of like third sector of our site that isn't represented on this screen, because I think of Jacob, our colleague, as sort of like the manager of that, but it's the Strong Towns Network. We provide platforms for other people to connect and share resources, and we moderate them lightly, but we are not providing the kind of like one-on-one training that other organizations are much better equipped to do. But we do have a Slack page, we do have a local conversations page, which is where we will send out an email for you if you want to self-organize a local chapter per se, not really a chapter, but a group of people to talk about how Strong Towns applies in your place. We'll support you. We'll give you some general resources and we'll spotlight your work for sure. But are we going to actually go to Cincinnati, Ohio and say like, Cincinnati, you should start a group, like, let's do it? No. So that distinction is a little tricky, but I think it's important.
Daniel, you had something you were going to say?
Kia pretty much covered it. I just wanted to say that there are local groups that have formed kind of organically of Strong Towns members who are excited about the mission, and they're doing amazing work. And that gets back to us and it gets translated into content on the site where we kind of show that off.
Yeah.
We just don't oversee those groups.
I think we're up to about 90 now. And Jacob and I just, so you two know too, Jacob and I have been having these really interesting conversations about how we take that to the next level. At our Asheville retreat, we talked about this, and as an offshoot of that, we're going to do some things here in the next few weeks that hopefully will be the next increment of nudging along that path. But yeah, we're not starting local chapters where we're having meeting minutes and having them report and anointing a leader and all those things. It's very organic. How would you say that the content manager position differs from a PR position, and how is it similar? Kia, you're smiling. Maybe I'll just let, you're.
Sure. Yeah. So I probably didn't do a good job of covering this. To the extent that we use, this is always sort of a tricky conversation, because as a nonprofit, people tend to think of when you have a blog for a nonprofit, that's your PR and communications, because what you're doing as a nonprofit is like somehow separate than the things you're saying about your nonprofit. We're a media organization. We're a media nonprofit. So the content is the product. The content is what we're doing. PR and communications is what I do to sort of like shout out that content and spread it a little bit further. And we also are working more specifically with a PR firm now outside who is better at, for instance, speaking like newspapers speak, getting us onto national media. And this is specifically tied to Chuck publishing a book, but our relationship with them is sort of evolving and ongoing. I think it's challenging, and for a while, Daniel's predecessor calls herself communications manager, because like this distinction again is kind of slippery. But the content manager should really be thinking about themselves as producing the core work of the nonprofit, not promoting some other work of the nonprofit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think I'll just leave it with that. Unless Danny, you had anything.
I thought just gave a perfect answer.
Okay. Are you all looking for added value skills such as data visualization capabilities for the content? Um, it's interesting because I think the short answer always is like, yes, value added skills are awesome. Jacob was hired to do our community building and he felt he had really good skills for that. And then he says, and I can also do InDesign. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, here's something I did. And I'm like, where did that come from? So now Jacob does some of our InDesign work and it's pretty amazing. We used to shop that out and I think Jacob does it really well. So any value added skills are fantastic. And we've tried to put the questionnaire we're sending out next week and the week after to allow some of that to come through. But yeah, that was wonderful. Anything you guys would add to that?
Nope.
So how do you differentiate between a hub or spoke type of article, or are they all equally important to your content strategy? I think I know what is meant by that, but maybe Daniel, we can talk about the jab, jab, jab kind of notion, because I think that's maybe more the lingo that we use. Do you want to take that one?
I think Kia might actually do a better job of communicating the jab, jab, jab concept.
We'll nominate Kia to handle this. Do you differentiate between hub and spoke, or are they all equally important? What kind of
Yeah, I mean, jab, jab, jab is something we talk about with regards to fundraising, generally speaking. So that's a little bit different than what I think this person's saying. Ian is your name. Ian, if we're misunderstanding you, please let us know. But my understanding of a hub type article is one that is like speaking to the core mission of our organization, and a spoke is something that is that has implications of our mission. So an example would be the Curbside Chat series is a hub article series. And a spoke series would be about why the local food is so important to the Strong Towns mission. We're not an organization that like at our core is about local food, but like it's a pretty interesting offset. Or, even our Slow the Cars campaigns, like we're an organization about financial resilience, but we also really care that people are dying on the streets. And wouldn't you know, when you narrow our roads in our communities, you also are going to save a whole lot of lives. And does that make sense?
Yeah. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I think we do have a history of casting a broad net in terms of sort of the topics that we cover. I don't know how to answer what's equally important or more or less important to the content strategy, other than our ultimate goal of getting people to identify with the movement and take action. But I think part of that is reaching different categories of people in a language that feels authentic to them and that means something to them. And then tying, if we're going to write an article about bicycling, if we're going to write an article about community gardens or something like that, tying it to the core themes of the Strong Towns message that you can find if you go to like our About page on our website. So we're meeting people where they're at, but then we're also sort of subtly helping them see the world like Strong Towns advocates and ask the questions that we want them to ask. So yeah, not everything is really, really narrowly focused on our core set of insights or our core message. We want to write stuff that's more kind of narrative and relatable. We want to write stuff that appeals to urban planners or architects or developers over here, but also to like community advocates over here. Different ends of the political spectrum. We try to cast a wide net so that we can meet people where they are, but then draw them into our conversation. I don't know if that helps at all.
Here's the way that I've described it. We're having this great party. It's called Strong Towns, and we want to have like a lot of doors for people to enter. But once they're here, we kind of want to have this party gel, like let's have multiple plays for people to onboard into our conversation. But then let's bring it back to like the core insights. Are we good with the party analogy? Okay, cool.
I like that.
What team communications, project, and knowledge management tools do you use? I'm going to skip this one because I feel like I answered that in the written Q&A thing. If you go on the website, it's the top article right now. So you can get that, and I answer that one in there. How far ahead do you plan your content calendar? How often do current events temporarily interrupt that calendar. I'm gonna answer this, and then Daniel can answer it in a more fair way. How far ahead do you plan your content calendar? Oh, like a day. How often do current events interrupt your calendar? Not often enough. So I think on the one, we want to do like plan way further ahead. And on the other one, the idea is that we want to be flexible enough where we can interrupt that when things demand. And we're really not good at either right now. So go ahead, Daniel.
Yes and yes. We would like to plan farther ahead than we do. No matter what our intentions or our execution is on that, we know that things are going to interrupt it or shake it up. I typically have the content calendar laid out for the next couple weeks, and then things get moved around or things get swapped, either because there's a current event we do want to respond to, or an announcement post about something the organization is doing, or because a volunteer writer, doesn't meet their deadline, asks for a little more time. Okay, we need to be nimble and respond to those things when they happen. The turnaround time working with a guest writer can be anywhere from like a couple days to more often 4 to 6 weeks between the initial contact with someone and that person delivering me a finished piece. So there's a lot of just flexibility and being willing to roll with the punches, I think. I do think we want to be better at having a long-term strategic vision about what are the stories we want to tell and how do we make sure we tell them, and publishing more in-depth series where we take a topic and really dive into it and really aim to be thought leaders on that topic and do it with a couple months of intense preparation. And that's part of why we're splitting my position into 2 positions, is to give us the ability to do that.
Yeah. You mentioned that you are a family-friendly organization. Could you unpack what you mean by that a little bit? I think Kia answered that earlier. She said, however you define your family, we work around it. I talked about being able to take my girls to dance and volunteer for softball and stuff. I'll say that we have the 2 other people who work here in Brainerd with me. One does our member support work, and the other one does I say just is like the most important person in my life. Does kind of office management stuff, office assistant kind of things, scheduling and that kind of stuff. They both have young kids, and Michelle, who does our event scheduling, has young kids. And if one of those kids is sick or one of those kids needs something, forgot their lunch at school, I think a normal job where you're expected to be in the office, there's all these constraints. And for us, it's just kind of like, get your work done and let's be flexible and make sure that your life comes first. And we've had instances where, things have happened. Daniel had a sick cat a couple of weeks ago. And, I had a neighbor this week who's having some struggles, who's had a tree fall down in their yard. And you know what we do? We just say, hey, we're going to take a time out here and deal with life first. And I don't know, to me, that's what being family friendly means. Do either of you have something you want to add to that?
Just that it's like we're human friendly. I mean, like we care about people too. Like people have doctor's appointments when they need to take a doctor's appointment. It doesn't have to necessarily be about having like kids and neighbors and pets. So, I mean, I think one thing I love about our employee manual, such as it is that it says, examples of things you should use time off for: taking a vacation to Aruba, where you want to unplug, take vacation for that. Taking a walk with a friend in the middle of the day who you haven't seen for a while, don't take vacation for that. Just make up the time later. And I think that's like, even if I didn't have a dog who needed to walk for 2 hours a day, I would probably, I still feel very like cared for here, just my individual needs.
Mm-hmm. What software do you use to manage content? Our whole thing is published on Squarespace. Beyond that, I know Daniel uses some Google Sheets to manage the content calendar. People submit things on Google Docs or Word. I mean, it's probably a little more chaotic than it should be, but everything ultimately ends up on Squarespace is where it ends up. Fair? How long are the staff retreats? Not long enough because, well, let's see. The last couple we flew into Asheville on Thursday and we all came home on Sunday. The one before that in Orlando, Daniel and Jacob and I got together got there on Wednesday, and then everybody else came Thursday night. We met all day Thursday just on content, and then we left on Sunday, except for Kia, who went to Harry Potter World.
Daniel went with me, so.
Oh yeah, you did, didn't you? I think maybe we should unpack the theme park thing here, because that was kind of a weird, if you don't know what we do. So when we do, like, we did this retreat in Orlando, our last one in December. And what we did is Daniel and Jacob and Daniel came early Thursday, but Jacob and I got there Wednesday evening. We spent all day Thursday, just the three of us, working on content. We had a lot to work through, a lot of stuff. Everybody else got there Thursday night. Did we go? Is that the night we went bowling? No, that was Friday night. I can't remember. Anyway, we tried to do something fun in the evening. Then we spent all day Friday working on stuff at the Airbnb that we had rented. I think everybody gave a talk, and then we had different topics we had to go through and chat about. The tour was in like early conceptual phase, and so we worked through that. We went bowling and went out to eat that night and what have you. The next day we got up and we went to Animal Kingdom at Disney World, right? And what we do is we show up and we have a list of topics that we need to talk about. Here's things that we want to just in person hash through. We had like 30 different things. And we have a tradition of starting with the newest person and then going to me at the end. You get to pick a topic off the list. And while we're standing in line for the 2-hour line for the Avatar ride, you just talk through whatever we have to talk through. And then if we get through that topic, we pick a new one. And if we get through that topic, we pick a new one. And then if the thing's starting to lag, we get on the ride and we do that. And then we get off and we get in another line and like, hey, let's move on to the next topic. It's one of these things that by standing in line and holding your meetings while you stand in line, it really keeps things moving. And, we'll stop and have a really nice lunch. We'll have a really nice dinner. We'll, enjoy some fun rides together and chill out. And we'll probably spend 14 hours at a park and get through like more work than you would if you sat in a conference room for 6 hours. Is that fair?
Yeah. And Chuck is freakishly good at taking notes while like walking past like a Star Wars figurine, and like it all translates. I was astonished by how well this worked the first time I did it. And now I can't imagine doing it another way.
Yeah. It's kind of our thing now.
Yeah.
I love it. We're going to be, just so everyone knows, I was in Santa Ana for a thing we're doing there in December. I was there this weekend and then went to Disneyland for the day with two of our board members who were also in the area at the time, and had one of these kind of great days with meetings. But I checked out Galaxy's Edge, the new Star Wars land, because our retreat this December will be at Disneyland. And I'm telling you guys, you're going to love it. I currently work as a news reporter. Yes, a real one, ! I've also written a few articles for Strong Towns. Would it be cool for the content manager to finish writing an article if the writer hasn't written part of it, but isn't going to meet his or her deadline? See, now
I've done that for a couple of writers with their permission.
Yeah, I was going to say,
individual conversation.
Jennifer has the burden of being like an actual news reporter, which there are all these kind of, ethical things that come into play. My wife is a news reporter, and I like get that part of it. I think our approach is, like Daniel said, to kind of work with people to kind of meet that objective. We're less like uptight. Let me put it this way. I feel like we're less uptight about bylines than a newspaper would be. I mean, I know if like 3 people contribute, you've got a byline and it's got all their, we tend to not be that formal about things. Maybe we should be, and maybe that's something you would bring to us that we could do better. But right now, this isn't something that we've struggled with a lot. Is that fair, Daniel?
I think so, yeah.
Kia?
Yeah.
To the other half of the question about contributing articles every now and then, absolutely. I do more writing for the site than is maybe in my formal job description. And part of that is just because of the background and the skill set that I bring. I was a volunteer writer for Strong Towns for 3 years before I was hired, just because I was an avid reader of the blog and I got interested and I got on board that way. So that was always something I was going to do because I was passionate about it. there will always be room if you want to write for you to write. The primary responsibility won't be to write long, in-depth think pieces or like journalistic, heavily researched stories. By all means, that's not the core of the job description. But
Right.
if you want to write, you got something compelling to write, we will find a way to make that happen.
What is your content strategy going forward with 2 content managers? I hope we didn't leave that impression that we're going to have 2. Daniel's role is going to change to be more of a senior editor role, not being so much traffic cop as kind of overall philosophical looking at the site. Are you looking for more contributors from the urban planning academic world, contributors from local government, highlighting organizations? Daniel, I'll let you take this one. What are we looking for from contributors? I feel like we're not looking for more academic world stuff, but I'm open to it if it's well written and compelling.
I don't think it's a priority. I'd be open to it if it's well written and compelling. One thing we try to do, and this is expressed in our current writing guidelines, those are something that could maybe use an update, but for what it's worth, strongtowns.org/pitch has what are now the writing guidelines that we give to guest contributors. If any of you are curious to check that out later. We try to be accessible to, like a reasonably educated layperson. We are not writing for an audience of urban planning professionals or architecture professionals or people who are going to know this jargon and that jargon. We want to be broadly accessible to an interested citizen from any background. So we're not heavily academic or data driven, but we've published pieces that have really fascinating charts and graphs and that do dig into data. We have definitely a subset of our really committed membership are like serious policy nerds who eat that stuff up. So I think that fits into the question earlier about meeting people where they are, speaking different people's languages, or finding different doors to bring people in to our conversation. But like academic contributions, not a core priority. I'd say our biggest content priorities in terms of the kinds of things we want to publish are really accessible, like beautifully packaged, bite-sized, kind of shareable encapsulations of our core ideas. We want that. We want innovative kind of thought leadership pieces on topics that are central to our conversation, where we have something to add that no one else is saying. And we want to document success stories of people doing the kind of work we think needs to happen out in the world, especially when it's our membership doing it. And pieces that inspire people to take bottom-up action, to be involved, active, strong citizens is what we call them, and make that feel possible and attainable.
Let me get through 3 real quick here. How many hours per week on average will this job require? And then another one, since it's full-time, is it a matter of getting what needs done, whether it's 20 or 60 hours, or is there some sort of time clock paperwork you have? No time clocks, no paperwork. It is a full-time job, so we assume 40 hours a week. I will say that there are periods of time when things get a little more hectic than that. We have member drive weeks, and those tend to be like an all hands on deck kind of thing. When we do our staff retreat and we're at Animal Kingdom, nobody's watching the clock and writing down, when we all go bowling and chat about stuff, people are not writing down. So the way that I respond to that is, it's one of those things where if you need the comfort of like a time clock, or if you're someone who's like used to documenting every hour you work, and that's like the restraining thing that makes you get up in the morning and do your job, you're probably not a good fit for us. I find, and I'm looking at you, Kia, I think you probably stick to roughly a 40-hour week on an average week. And I think that gives you some tension, because you would easily work 60 if you didn't force yourself to quit, right?
Yep.
And I feel like that's the perfect person to be part of this organization, where it's like, there's always more I want to do and need to do. And I feel like really compelled by everything. So I want to do it, but I'm going to constrain myself because I have, like, that's the discipline I have to have.
Well, and it also limits you to what's actually really important. You know, I mean, I think like someone who's like, yes, I have a job where I can like pass off 20 hours a week as 40 hours a week, doesn't understand what they're getting into. Like you're going to have 40 hours of a week worth of stuff to do if you're going to do it well. But someone who's like, I'm going to invest like 80 hours a week into this job and really prove myself, like you're going to burn yourself out and you won't be happy. So
right.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
The next one is, does say the word asana? How do intelligent people say it?
I say asana, but okay. Someone's gonna fight me on it.
No, I'm willing to grant that you're far more sophisticated than I am.
It's okay.
Does that cover everything? No, I answered this a little bit in the written one online, so refer to that. But yeah, we use Slack
all the time.
Yeah, all the time. Social fit sounds awesome. What are the expectations in terms of content production, traffic goals, event management, nitty-gritty about the position, and of course, any hint on salary and benefit possibilities? I'll take the last one, and then maybe you guys can take the first half of that. The salary, and I apologize, I don't remember what it is, but it's in the job description. And I
think you said up to 39,000.
Okay, that sounds right. I'll just be quite frank with everybody. We have 975 applicants. If someone completely blows us away and says, I need, I feel like we're pretty flexible on this, but I'm not planning to pay more than what we have in the budget right now for this. In terms of benefits, besides the benefit of working with all of us, at Hard Benefits, we do not have a healthcare plan. Right now, for full-time people, give a stipend every month in compensation for that. I think it's $200 we're doing right now. So in addition to your paycheck, you will get that. We also have a 3% contribution to a retirement plan. We can help you get that set up, but it's going to be one that you run and manage, not a Strong Towns plan. I kind of like that because it gives everybody the flexibility to use their own system and their own platform. And that's pretty much the salary and benefits. You'll have time off. I think that's also spelled out in the job description, but maybe not. We can talk about that when we get to hiring. We do holidays like everybody else. And is there something I'm missing on that?
Mm-mm.
I think that's it. You guys want to take that in expectations in terms of content production, traffic goals? Nitty gritty.
I think a lot to that.
Yeah.
Content production, we at the moment we aim to publish 15 new blog posts a week. We have 3 podcasts, 1 episode a week from each of them. That's the current volume of our production. And then there are some projects on the wish list that might go beyond that in terms of packaging our content in different ways, ebooks, special issue campaigns, things like that. We're trying to be a rapidly growing organization in terms of audience and reach. So all of that can change. Traffic goals, that's a moving target. We would like to double our audience and our reach year over year. We haven't always achieved that doubling, but we're shooting for the stars here. I
feel too the whole reason we're adding this position is to up our production capacity. Right. And not just up it in terms of volume, but up it in terms of quality and, effectiveness. So I feel like if we're sitting here a year from now with this person and we're publishing 15 articles a week, but we're not growing our audience, the stuff we're doing is not that compelling. I wouldn't put that all on, the new content manager. I would put it on the team, but that would, I think your capacity to add to that is going to be the thing that will be this person is really adding value to our organization.
The only thing I would add is that I think a lot of the indicators we talk about in terms of our metrics and what means Strong Towns as a movement is successful are not traffic numbers as much as the further down the pipeline numbers of like, are we growing our membership exponentially, or is it geometric growth? And we see that all those things sort of as a piece. And if like we aren't meeting our content goals, if we aren't meeting our membership goals, frankly, and because those things lead directly into one another. That's the only thing I would add, is that your focus should be not on like, how do I get my little corner of Strong Towns to work, but how do we advance the Strong Towns movement in ways that impact and ricochet off into all kinds of places.
Right. I think that's perfect. How will performance for this position be measured? I feel like you kind of just answered that. What are kind of goals you'd imagine this person setting and achieving? I feel like we do like a bad job of formally measuring success of individuals, but I feel like we do a pretty good goal of helping assess people's strengths and things that they need to work on. But is that a fair statement with the two of you?
Yeah, I think we're data driven, as Chuck mentioned before. We measure metrics, but the team really takes collective responsibility for moving the ball forward. So for example, as the current content manager, I'm looking at Google Analytics. I'm looking at the traffic to our site, what pieces are really taking off. But I certainly don't have sole credit if we have a really hot week in terms of site traffic. I don't have sole blame if we have an off week, because there are so many variables in play. It's not, we need to be putting out quality stuff. It needs to be connecting with people. We need to be framing it right on social media, getting the right headline, the right attached photo, the right blurb. There's all sorts of other work that draws people into the movement, that makes them engaged, that makes them come back. Like, it's a team effort.
I want to give Kia a second to be critical of me. Seriously, I welcome this, especially in this instance. I'm really not, like, I always hated the formal job review kind of process where we sit down and we evaluate this on 1 to 10 and, whatever. I always hated it. It just felt so impersonal. Some of the board would like me to do more of that. And I think they would like to do more of that because they would like to be able to review nice, happy forms that describe how everybody's performing. My sense has always been like, if things aren't going well, I want to talk to you about it. And I want to figure out why, and I want to figure out what we can change and what we can do. And to be quite frank, I think part of this position is like, we got Daniel here, and Daniel's like a fantastic writer, but not necessarily like the best 6-week out organizer of content. That's not like a deficiency in Daniel. That's just like, okay, we've got this opportunity to grow and add this new position. And let's get someone who's really good at that to complement what Daniel is like really, really good at. I was just writing really compelling content, which I've been doing a lot less of lately because I've been working. And so I kind of feel like Daniel's in a sense replacing some stuff I used to do, and this person's going to replace some stuff Daniel used to do. What I'm asking you to push back on is, I'm not real good at giving formal feedback. And I want you to talk maybe a little bit about how that is a good thing or a bad thing, and go ahead and talk about the bad part of it.
Oh my God. Can I talk about the good part of it first? Because I'm Midwestern.
Well, you can.
So I have to ease into things. Okay. Compliment sandwich.
I just don't want you to feel like you have to sugarcoat it. Because I do think that if some people only work well in places where they're getting like a stream of formal feedback. And you will not get that here.
No. I think like the bad part of it, I would chalk up mostly to just like growing pains for me with the organization. It took me a long time to understand that like I wasn't being tricked. When you were saying like, Kia, you're not measuring up, like, because my role changed also. I started off in a role that's much more similar to what Jacob is doing now. And we decided that I was a better fit for something else. And I'm a lot happier in this job than I was in the old one. And I was pretty happy in the old one. So it worked out well. I think it was like very confusing to me as someone who is like a little bit of a people pleaser and a little bit of a, like, I want to do the best possible job at everything kind of a person. When my boss would say to me, like, you're not doing as great in this, so I'm moving you to a different area, not taking that personally, and not thinking like, oh no, I failed at my job, because that wasn't at all what you were saying. You were saying you did a good job at this, you'll do a better job at that. Like, this is what I learned from you from watching you do this. And that is like, that can be really destabilizing and confusing if like you don't have, I mean, this is like the only thing I'd be even kind of critical of is that like the expectations are sometimes a little fuzzy, because like I thought like my job as, you know, membership coordinator, whatever my title was like to grow our membership, and like I would grow it, but I wouldn't grow it at the right rate, and then I would like feel like I had like lost everything, and then you would say, well, look at this indicator and like this is great, and I was like, but the thing that you told me to do in the bar I'm supposed to clear, and and I would weep. And that was a challenging transition for me. The longer I've been in this job, the more I appreciate the way that we think about performance not as a set of metrics and check boxes and 1 to 5, how are you doing on time management or whatever, but in terms of the net effect of how is our movement progressing. And we are both very data driven and very personal in the way that we treat our employees, which I think is like a rare combination that's hard to get your feet under you at first.
Mm-hmm. Kia mentioned the importance of being able to pick up a late or incomplete freelance assignment. How does revising line editing figure into the job, and how much writing does the job entail? Did we answer that? I feel like we've answered that.
Right.
There's 33 questions, so I don't want to answer the same one twice. I feel like we answered that. Alec, I apologize if you don't. Approximately how many people does Strong Towns employ at any time? How many departments are there? There's 0 departments. We have a few teams. I think we have 5 full-time and 4 part-time, and then a number of different contractors. Is there room for growth? Yes, this whole position is about growth. Average retention rate of employees. You know, you've used the word employee a couple times. Have I ever referred to anybody here as an employee? I really like, it's not my language. Like, it's not the language I use.
Right.
We have had in the entirety of Strong Towns, I think we have had one person we let go, and it was really like a mutual agreement kind of thing, where it was like it wasn't the right position for them and it wasn't the right position for us, and we were kind of at a point in the budget cycle where like cash was tight, and it was like, yeah, let's move on from this. Beyond that, we've got, like I said, 9 right now, and in addition, we've maybe had 3 or 4 that have been here and left for other things, for other reasons. But, you know, Michelle started in 2015, right when we made the strategic plan shift. She's been here since then. Kay, you've been here 2.5 years. Daniel, you've been here a year. Jacob started a year ago. We're pretty young and pretty young in terms of like the time we've been here, but we've only been doing this in the way we're doing it since the middle of 2015. So we're like 4 years into our strategic plan.
The people who have left for like grad school, or they wanted to move into a slightly different field. And
yeah,
it's not like people are like quitting in like disgrace and distress all the time.
Right. And even the one person that we kind of, you know, I feel like that was a good move for them too, and us. So yeah, we want people to be successful, and we want people to be happy. And if you're not happy here and you're not successful here, I feel like I want to help you move on to something that you will be good at, you know, you will be successful at. Because it's not, I'm one of these people who like, I don't believe like there's like bad employees or bad people. Maybe there is, but you're just like, you're in the wrong spot for you. Right. And we're definitely a spot for like a certain kind of person. And if it winds up to not be you, I want to help you find a place that is. Who is the staff ultimately accountable to? Why does that make me laugh? Are there expectations from the board, donors, stakeholders? I feel like we are, on paper, we're accountable to our board, and I'm accountable to the board, and the board is like my number one collaborators. They are, I mean, it's not like we have a relationship where they're here and I'm here and I'm accountable to them. We're like collaborating on this. And really our whole environment is very collaborative. There's not a lot of like, you're accountable to this. I think ultimately at the end of the day, I feel like we're accountable to our members more than donors or other people. Sometimes we take on grants from foundations and then we're accountable to them to produce what we say we will produce. But I feel ultimately like our members are vesting not only their financial contribution, but their kind of mental part of this movement. Like I'm vested in this movement, and we have, we hold ourselves accountable to them for doing what we say we're going to do and sticking to what our mission is and sticking to our focus areas and keeping this moving forward and being, holding ourselves accountable. That's my sense. I don't know if you guys have a different sense of who we're accountable to, but I feel like it's this broad membership and it's this overall concept of the movement that we're really ultimately accountable to. Kia, you good with that?
I don't think that we're an organization that's overly focused on like accountability in the sense of like, I don't come to you every day, Chuck, like groveling and saying like, I didn't do this, I mean,
right.
Like we're much more, there's a lot of trust and,
it's a lot of trust.
Like, involved in our work, and you have to honor that trust. I think that's the expectation, but it's not as formalized as I think a lot of workplaces, which is something I appreciate.
I would add that I think every single person on this team like genuinely cares about seeing the world change in the way that Strong Towns wants it to change. It doesn't mean we agree on absolutely everything, but we were all in some way, advocates or very concerned about these issues before coming to work for this organization. I think given the intensity and the pace of what we do, I think if you were completely uninterested in that, I think it would be hard to succeed on this team.
Yeah. What's the best advice you can give for doing the questionnaire? So this is the first round and the second round questionnaire. For me, be yourself. Like, don't try to think of what we want, but just be authentic to who you are. Did you guys have something beyond that?
I think I did all the things you're not supposed to do, and I still got the job. So like I wrote like essays for every single one. Don't do that to us because I feel like we'll die because there's like 900 applicants. But if a few of you do, I'm sure it might work out. I think just being yourself and speaking to like with passion about if you really want this, like let us know.
Mm-hmm. Can you send some links to the best performing content on the site? No. I mean, I think if you go on the home, I'm not going to do that. If you go on the homepage and scroll down at the bottom, I think we've got some of our best all-time content.
It's under frequently asked questions.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Because
sorry.
Go ahead, Daniel.
At the end of each year, we also publish sort of a best of recap. If you go to our archive and look at December of any of the last 3 or 4 years, you'll see pieces that have gotten a lot of traction or pieces that we're really proud of or that we think are intellectually important and well executed. That would be a good sampling.
Yep. Is the plan to stay with Squarespace? It's interesting how often that comes up. And I was baffled by it because I'm like, I like Squarespace. It's working fine. But they say here do you anticipate migration to a different platform as the content vault gets larger? Our content vault is like 6,000 pieces right now. Like, I don't know how much larger. I mean, it gets larger by like 700 or 800 a year. I don't know. We've looked into it. We've talked about it. Will it happen? I don't know. There's no plans to do it right now.
I think if we hired someone who like felt passionately about it and had the ability to do it, then it would be a conversation we would have. But right now Squarespace works because we aren't a bunch of web developers and it's accessible to people who aren't. I know that there are good things about WordPress that we should probably do, but no one has the skills to do them on our team. So we're not doing it right now.
There have been a couple of things that we were frustrated with like 3 years ago that Squarespace now does. So I don't know. I mean, does the content manager actually write posts? I think we answered that. Yes. What's the most successful article Strong Towns has made? That would really depend on how you measure success. I'll give 2 examples. That the 20 mile an hour street post is our unicorn of unicorns in terms of click-through rate. So if you're measuring on click-through rate, but what we found is that it's not sticky. Lots of people click through to it, but a small percentage of those people stick around. It's a great like sticky, it's a great like clickbait post, but it's not a very sticky post. The Growth Ponzi Scheme series, on the other hand, has pretty good click-through rate and is also really, really sticky. So how do you measure success? I think you measure it in like many different ways. Is that fair? You guys have anything? I understand and strongly endorse Strong Towns' mission. Are there opportunities to put on our Nikes and just do it? I hope so. Can we break the U.S. into districts and focus on making connections with mayors and people on the ground? We could organize them into becoming closer with Strong Towns' audience. I mean, you'd be amazed at how many mayors we talk to and have cycled through. How many people in the U.S. Congress. I've been to the White House to present stuff. We've been in contact with the last administration and the current administration. We have governors that are members of Strong Towns. Again, I'll go back to, I don't feel like these kind of things are either A, our calling, or B, our path to accomplishing our mission. We're not lobbyists, and we're not good at this, and we're not writing legislation, and we're not organizers. We're really great content producers, and our content is compelling, and it motivates people to ask difficult questions of themselves and make changes. And I feel like as long as we stick when we stick to that, we do really well. Just so people know too, our total budget for this year is $550,000. We are making, it's tiny. We are making massive changes in this country with a ridiculously small budget, And I think the reason we're able to do that is because we're hyper focused on what we do well.
And a lot of that we spend on churros at Disneyland too.
We do spend a disproportionate amount of that budget on churros.
Just kidding.
We do. Have you ever conducted sponsored independent research and published a report on the findings? No, it's just not what we do. Our content is not white papers and not research kind of stuff. We get criticized for that sometimes because people want like, where's your formal findings? And it's not what we do. I have noticed that you have a Reddit group, but it seems to be more of a repost of stories on the main page. Any plans to expand your Reddit presence? We don't have a Reddit group. Like, I'm not on Reddit.
We didn't start it. Yeah.
We didn't. No.
Somebody else did it.
Daniel, are you on Reddit?
Very rarely.
Okay.
I'm aware that our stuff makes it. One of the cool things about Strong Towns and the way this got started, like as a blog with a really devoted following, is that we have super members who are ridiculously engaged, willing to donate huge amounts of their time and energy to us. We don't even ask them to. And so sometimes things just kind of happen out in the world because someone is super excited about sharing what we're doing. And like, that's great.
Yeah.
Like we publish, as we talked about, we publish non-native articles on social media, like dozens every week, where we take someone else's article. What I mean by we publish is we repost it with some commentary. A lot of those suggestions, a lot of those are articles that our members just like, we have a Slack channel with a bunch of people who don't work for the organization who just contribute to it, as well as those who do work for it. And just like, you should talk about this. We get story ideas constantly from members. And then, our stuff pops up out there in the world in ways that we, the staff, had nothing to do with.
Right. It's really weird. We at one point we were going to like claim our Pinterest real estate. So we had like strongtowns.whatever in Pinterest, and someone already had it. So like that kind of stuff happens, and it's like, it's cool that people are talking about this. You emphasize Strong Towns collecting and analyzing web data. Obviously the content manager is involved in doing that. It wasn't in the qualifications. Do you expect the content manager to be, what do you expect? No data that we collect is like difficult to collect or analyze. And, we have a monthly metrics report we put together that tracks our audience. That stuff comes from Squarespace. We use Google Analytics. It's fairly easy to use. We're actually looking at a couple other tools. I am looking at a couple other tools that we can use to kind of streamline some of our data tracking. Don't let that intimidate you. There's nothing there that you're not going to be able to do.
I can train you in all of it in less than a day. No question.
Do you plan content to keep variety of topics covered at a given time? Daniel, I feel like for me, the answer is it would be great. And I think, having with intention, different topics would be awesome. There are times when we look back and say we were really heavy on this or that during a certain week. It would be great to spread that out a little bit. I think if this role could do that for us, that would be helpful. Anything else, Daniel, that good?
Yeah, I think an exceptional person in this role would be someone who really takes the initiative on figuring out better ways to identify what are the gaps, what are the stories we're not telling, what topics should we circle back to or approach in a novel way, and help it make that happen.
How is this unusual process going to find the person who is best able to do the job, especially considering that the work environment is very independent, being a work from home position? It's funny because we get a lot of comments on how unusual our process is. To me, like the idea of looking at a resume is one of the most bizarre things, or a cover letter is one of the most bizarre things ever. I've been hiring like this for 20 years, and I've found, people say if you hit or miss on half the people you hire, you're a genius. My gosh, we're way over half on hits. I feel like this process really is going to bring to the fore people who kind of intuitively are a good fit for us, and then we'll chat with you and figure it out. I don't know. Kia, do you have strong?
I would just add, when you see the questionnaire, a lot of your questions will be answered on this, because the questionnaire is really good. The questionnaire is basically asking you to do things that you would do in the job, which is like a resume cannot tell you that. I'm someone who, not to brag, but like I'm pretty good at my job. I think
really good at your job. Yeah.
I suck at writing resumes. I probably wouldn't have this job if we hadn't had this process, because it would have been like, here's my weird classics major resume. I worked at a bookstore before this. Oh no, but because I was able to show what I'm actually made of and what I could do in this position, I ended up in a place that's a really good fit for me. So hold tight until you see that questionnaire, and then you'll be like, oh, they're geniuses. So that's my opinion.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Is there a strategy to pull eyes to core topics via outlier areas? Yes. I mean, our ad campaigns are hopefully doing that. We bring people in with a topic, and then we expose them to a whole bunch of other stuff. And I don't know, it feels like it works really well. What wins or KPIs do you celebrate? What's a KPI? I'm afraid
performance indicators.
Oh, it is? Really? That's a term I don't know. What wins do we celebrate? I feel like we celebrate all the time here. We started that Kudos Slack channel, which is now my favorite Slack channel, where we just post nice things about everybody. And when we get feedback that's positive, we share it in there. So I don't know. What wins do we celebrate, Daniel?
We talked about how we're data driven. So I think we do look for external confirmation that's quantitative that we are reaching more people and doing the things we want to do. But yeah, I think to what Chuck just said, I think the environment internally is very celebratory on a day-to-day basis. There's a sense of we are this momentum where we're making change. People are responding positively. We're sharing that with each other when we see it. And we're driven by that. And if that slows down, we're like, okay, let's amp it up a little bit. Let's refocus.
How do you want people to feel after reading Strong Towns article? I think that depends on where they're at in the process. If they're new, I want them to be like, wow, I never thought about that before, and kind of like curious and interested. Like that really blew my mind. If they've been here a long, long time, I would like them to think like, this is why I come here for Strong Towns. Like this is the kind of stuff I'm looking for. So I think the hard thing about what we do, and the reason why we found 15 articles a week or 15 pieces of content a week is a good mix, is because we try to get stuff that hits everybody where they are. We try to write stuff that like the hardcore returning people are going to find compelling and interesting, but also stuff that someone new could come in and get like something dropped on them that, wow, I haven't thought about that before. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. I think we hit different emotional notes too. One thing that's challenging about Strong Towns is that some of the core insights that motivated Chuck to start writing the Strong Towns blog a decade ago are really kind of downers.
Yeah, that's true.
We want people to feel cold and afraid.
Yeah, no, I was in a dark place. Yeah, no doubt.
And there's a gravitas, I think, to the message we want to get across. Like, this is really serious stuff that is going to touch your life, no matter who you are, no matter where you live. but also to convey an optimism and a we can do it and you can do it, and citizens on the ground can turn their place around.
Right.
Because you can't build a mass movement around doom and gloom.
Right. Right.
But there's a gravitas, I think is a good word, that we're not going to depress you, but we're not just going to be feel good stories all day, every day either. There's some real substance there.
Totally. Thanks, Daniel. Would the content manager communicate with volunteer writers? That's like a primary core part of the job. Yes. The content is broad, touching people with content and get them into Strong Town's doors, touch people on topics that they relate to. I'm not sure
I
what
think
that
was a reaction to a discussion we were having earlier.
Oh, so we're
I think
chatting.
we see some chat channel misapplications going on.
All right. How do you measure nudges? Oh my gosh, the hardest question.
I like it.
When you have brought people through your member cultivation tunnel, what is your metric to know people have moved to implementation? Like the question that keeps me up at night. Do any of you, I will answer this unless one of you two have a really strong sense of wanting to do this.
I want to hear you answer this, Chuck.
Okay.
I have things to say too, but you go first.
Good. This is the hardest thing. And this is like, I think the biggest leap of faith we had, especially back in the early days when people were really responding to our content in ways that we could see. And we were hearing people like, oh, Strong Towns inspired me to do this, but like, well, what do we do with that? We become very intentional about trying to document success stories and like write down and have people talk about what it means to them, what they're doing as a result, what impact that has had. And we've actually become pretty good at documenting a wide range of success stories. The next step for us is to become even more intentional about this. And I wish Jacob was here because he could talk a lot about this. Jacob's role right now is really trying to find out and discover of the places that we've seen that have done great work. What are the characteristics that brought them from being enthused and inspired by the content to actually taking action? Like, what are the key things that had to happen in there? And are those things that are replicable? And it's a really hard question. And I think it's something that we're not naturally good at. We've seen it happen. So we produce this stuff and then all of a sudden I'll have a mayor say, yeah, I read what you said and we completely redid this project. Or a city administrator say, yeah, I did this and then I had my whole staff read it and we completely revamped our entire process. We'll have people on the ground say, like, I read this and I went out and I did this. Figuring out what the magic sauce is, like what it is like our next step. And I feel like we don't know that yet, but that's the thing we're trying to focus in on. Please, Kia.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a priority. And I think someone in this position would develop even more exciting ways to source that information. I will say that we do send out a questionnaire around the member drive to specifically solicit success stories. And we usually get like 50 to 100 people telling us things that are really exciting. We're constantly on our networks, like our platforms like Slack and our comments looking for people who have these stories to tell. We get them through the media a lot. It never fails to astonish me how often someone will pop up. Like we saw that article the other day about like a guy in Peoria who's like running a really cool urban agriculture program and is running for mayor. And half the article was about how he like was inspired by us. And so basically we keep our eyes open, but I would love to develop more ways to go fishing for those because people are doing things with our influence all the time. And it's pretty cool.
It is. Would this role incorporate pieces of marketing and PR? I think we all incorporate pieces of marketing and PR into what we're doing. There's not like we don't have like silos here. So we're all kind of in on the conversation. So yes, I think in a sense. Is this job remote, work from home? Well, if you want to move to Brainerd, you can come into this office and buy my books and work here. But yeah, it is. Are you open to your content manager also serving as a podcast host? No, we have no track record of doing that. Yes, of course. Kia was like, me do a podcast? What? And now it's like one of our most successful podcasts. Yeah, it's fantastic. Jacob does a great podcast, and that was not at all why he was hired. He's just really good at it. So yeah, absolutely. Do you have a separate social media manager, or is that part of the content manager job? What social media sites are you using? So Kia, go ahead.
I think that I'm mostly serving in the capacity of social media manager, but we all contribute to social media. So Chuck writes posts, Daniel writes posts, Jacob writes posts, our intern Rob writes posts now and then. I'm the one who's sort of going through and editing them and making sure that they are in a coherent voice. Jacob is the one who is actually managing the conversation on like an admin level, going through the comments and making sure no one's posting crude gifs or getting too heated, and also like making sure that people are connected with further resources when they have a question, and he's really good at that. So there's no one particular role, but it's shared amongst many people. I would anticipate the content manager being a contributor to our feeds, which right now only include, second part of the question, Facebook and Twitter. We would love to expand to Instagram and LinkedIn a little bit more deliberately, not so much Pinterest. It's just a bandwidth issue right now. But yeah, your work would absolutely touch the social media world. I would probably still remain the person who's like doing the oversight on that piece of it.
We're going to be bumping up Instagram with the book, with the Strong America tour.
Yeah.
I know. And then LinkedIn is like, I feel like the next, we've talked about this as like the next frontier. Yeah. So far I'm still in this position. Good. That's good to hear. What is due July 19th? Just your email address and where you're located so we can put you on the list. We have a cutoff then because we have to cut it off at some point. We had 975 people interested when I started this today, so we'll see. Is video considered an important part of your content strategy? Why isn't there more video today? I mean, if you guys have strong opinions on this, I would just say, no, it's not an important part of our content strategy. It is expensive. It is less viral than people think. There's not a real clear path to watching a video and going down the rest of our pipeline. We have spent time and money doing video, and we found like it's a very poor return on investment. And it's fascinating because a while back, Facebook became like the video platform. Like if you want to get, people looking at you on Facebook, you do video. And what Facebook discovered after a few months was that that's like absolutely not true. And the people who like shifted to video, I think underperformed. So we just find when we measure the metrics that video does not do great. There are some things we communicate with video that can only be done with video, and we use video then for that. But it's not, we don't put an emphasis on it because it really has a very low return on investment.
I would
go ahead, Daniel.
Back only very slightly on that, just to say we're an intellectually flexible kind of organization. Like everything that Chuck just said is true, but also if you come into this position and you have a clear vision for how we should be using video, and you can make that case and you can convince the team, then we do it. We are constantly reevaluating our own approach.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I think I'll just say like the one other thing that's held us back from doing video is that none of us are video people. And so the challenge we've always had is if we're going to be serious about video, do we go out and get a video person? And when we look at like our urgent needs and where we're making a lot of progress and have momentum, it's never been in the video realm.
Right.
I think having a very small team, just everything we could do gets evaluated against all the other things we could do. Opportunity cost is a huge part of our discussions internally.
Huge. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's confusing for people on the outside because they look at like, there's this great opportunity you're letting slide. We let a lot of great opportunities go by the wayside because it's not in the core strength of what we do, and it would be a distraction. I'm convinced one of the reasons we have been so ridiculously successful despite our budget and our size is because we're focused, right? We're ridiculously focused. Are you striving for an international reach? We're getting it. We have an international reach, and we have international members, and we have large audience internationally. I'm flattered by that, and I think that's amazing. It's not like our focus. So I think striving would be the wrong word. Is that fair?
Canada is the only thing I'd mentioned.
Yeah, I do think we intentionally work with a Canadian audience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only one though. Like a lot of our message is portable to other places that have followed and imitated the North American development pattern, but are we going like way out of our way to talk about Shanghai unless it is Shanghai in comparison to North American communities? No. It's just biting off too much.
And I'm from Minnesota, so I just consider Canada to be like a northern state, right? It's just like one of us.
Yeah, right.
When I go up there, I can slide back into my Minnesota accent and nobody thinks I'm strange. There's been a lot of literature that's come out, street harassment and city design, since Kia wrote the first article on it around 2 years ago. Wow. I was wondering if there's something the content manager could continue to elaborate on, should it be in their interest. I would love to consider, going down that path again. I mean, I think that recycling things we've done before and updating them and continuing to kind of push on that thread is always very helpful for us. So yeah, that would be great. You agree?
Yeah. And I would just add that, like, I think that piece was an example of me talking about, like, if we accomplish our core message of making our cities financially strong and resilient, what would the implications be for topic? And I am really interested to see us explore more spoke articles like that, to take a term from earlier in the webcast. When Daniel was outlining like his content objectives, the only thing I would have added is I want us to see us like expand the implications of our message, the diversity of our contributorship, which by its nature extends the implication of our message, and be very deliberate about that. And I hope the content manager can help that happen.
Do you have to have a personal social media account to be considered viable for this position? I think you have to be friends with me to be no. The answer is no, you don't have to. I think once you, whoever gets this position, we're going to ask you to get, at the very least, like a Twitter account. So we can, link to you on there and reference you, but we'll talk about that. But you to be considered viable for this position, we're not even going to know who you are until we get to the very end. So no. I mean, you have to have an email address we can email you at, but that's it. It's like, you don't need anything else. You don't even need hands to be able to type. You just gotta, you know what I'm saying? Like
adaptive technology.
Yeah, you just got to be able to do the job. And then at the end, we'll figure that out. Like, okay, I don't have social media. I write on papyrus, and then someone takes it and types it for me into a thing. I'm like, okay, that's really weird. I didn't think about that, but sure.
You can tell I've been answering questions for 2 hours since we're considering the ancient Greek candidates. Okay, cool.
Right.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. This has been kind of weirdly fun. We appreciate everybody applying. Hopefully we answered all your questions and you've got a good sense of who we are and what we do. And hopefully you still want to work with us. And we're excited to read all the submissions next week. Friday, the position will close. That's the end of what we're taking applicants. We will, on Monday morning, when you get up, it should be like 5 a.m. my time or something like that. We will send you out an email that will have all the questions for the first round. I think because of the number of people, we're actually going to move the deadline up a little bit to Thursday at noon, because we're going to need a lot more time to go through them if we're going to meet the next Monday deadline. We may wind up pushing back that next Monday deadline, but I will communicate with everyone about that by email. So thank you. And thanks, Kia and Daniel, for doing this. I know it took a big chunk of your afternoon, but we will, it's time well spent. So thanks, everybody. Take care.
Take care.
See ya.